marriage, for example, or committed partnership, for example. In a conventional vessel, it's possible to have, right, people who are holding different levels of consciousness, as Diane so beautifully unpacked, right, and for them to actually find that place with each other where they can hold each other. You know, certainly a parent and a child, as Dee talked about, is clearly a place where that is the ultimate conventional vessel, right? It's the right. So there clearly people holding different levels of consciousness can find each other. Okay. What about if we're not in a conventional vessel? Okay. Right. What about? I mean, let me just kind of throw out an example, you know, and kind of make it very, very real, right? What about, you know, if you have an employer, right, who falls in love with an employee, okay, right? Good example, right? According to the laws of the United States and, you know, of every, you know, country that I'm aware of, right, as long as it's fully mutual and consensual, the fact that they're an employer and employee, right, has no legal implications, unless, right, unless, right, exactly, right, if the relationship doesn't work, right, if the relationship doesn't work and one of the sides is unhappy, then they might go back and reread the relationship, right, as harassment, for example, right? You know, just to throw out an example off the top of my head, okay, right? So what happens is here you're talking about a context which is post-conventional, meaning it's out of the conventional frame of separation, individuation boundaries. You've allowed some level of dual roles, right? Now you open up Cosmopolitan magazine, right? It was about a year and a half ago. And there's this whole wonderful thing about, you know, it's funnier than hell, about, you know, meeting, you know, your future partner at work. Okay? Well, why? Well, because, right, you know, because, well, but today in the workforce, many people, since the church doesn't provide today, right, singles bars don't quite do it. So the place actually where people actually meet and actually see each other in authentic engagement is very often at work, right? However, right, however, the nature of the law today is such, right, is that conventional natural place, if it doesn't go right, you have an explosion, right? Now, here's the deal, right? If you're engaging with someone and you're experiencing post-conventionally, and they're thinking conventionally, right? So then, because you don't have a classical container, it explodes. That's what I meant when I said it's not a possibility, right? Unless basically, actually, the person that you're engaged with and you are at the same level of consciousness, and you're both actually experiencing this in a way where if it, for whatever reason, doesn't work, you hold it from that post-conventional level of consciousness in deep honor, right, and reverence, retrospectively, and not only prospectively, right, then, you know, it actually doesn't hold. So the distinction I'm making, I think, is important. I think what Dee's talking about, which is absolutely correct, is that within a context, within a frame, clearly you're going to have different levels of consciousness, and you can hold it, and as Dee said, you can get to sweetness.
No, I think we're saying the same thing, actually.
Go ahead, please.
Go at it one more time.
Go ahead.
So let's imagine you're in an unconventional, or one that's not prescribed relationship, that whatever the bond was breaks, you both go out of the relationship. Suddenly you see what you would consider to be, because it's always them, it's never us. You see someone devolve, and they hate you now for whatever reason, right? I'm saying that even in spite of that, it's possible for you to maintain a higher level of regard.
Absolutely.
In relationship to that person's choice. I think we've probably all been there.
Absolutely.
And it's like such hard work.
Absolutely.
So we agree, don't we?
And what I'm saying is, and I think we're saying two sides of the same thing, is that it's not advisable to enter that relationship. Right? That is to say.
Yeah, if you could read it ahead of time.
That's right. That's right. In other words,
I wouldn't have married my first husband.
Could you have like Suzanne Cook Reuter, like things you pass out?
Well, let me say it very simply. If a young, let me say it like really clearly.
Yeah,
you know, a young male teacher is coming to me for advice. Okay, what advice do I give him? Right. So since it's very hard to tell, right, whether your partner is post-conventional or pre-conventional, and until you know them very well. And by the time you know them very well, it may be too late.
Or
right?
egocentric,
right?
or
egocentric, or ethnocentric, right?
Yeah.
And it's the level of consciousness that we think, and maybe this is a good way to say this kind of core point for this whole weekend, right? One of the key contributions, right, of many streams of thought, but particularly integral theory, is that love by itself, right, is a state experience. Being in love is a state experience. And being in love is refracted through the level of consciousness I'm at, to the stage of consciousness I'm at. That, you know, an integral journey of love, you know, that's what Dee and I, that's been implicit in everything we've said. But let's just kind of, this is a really good place to say it clearly. An integral journey of love, right, the key idea is that love at level 1 and love at level 2 and love at level 3 and love at level 4 mean very, very, very different things, right? And if we would look at, you know, and I'm not going to do it now, although it's tempting to, but I'm not going to. But you know, if you look like very, very quickly, you know, at, you know, beige level consciousness, you know, love means just kind of surviving together. You know, at purple level consciousness, love means the love of the person who's related to me in my clan, right? You know, at, you know, red level consciousness, right? I'm of course doing what I said I'm not going to do, right? At red level consciousness, right? You know, love means I love the person who's kind of holding power with me because we're wielding power together, right? At blue level consciousness, I love my fellow in the church, right? I love all my fellow Mormons who are part of the celestial family, all my fellow Jews, all my fellow Christians, right? And that's everyone who's kind of part of my mythic membership society. Right? You know, at orange, there's already more of a meritocracy. You know, Ayn Rand, I love someone who's competent. And I love someone who I'm in business with. I love someone who has, you know, kind of competence becomes what creates, you know, love. The great scene of kind of orange love is page 254 in a book called Atlas Shrugged. And Dagny Tiger, Hank Reardon, like the great orange love, right? Where these two competencies meet in this kind of erotic ecstasy.
Bill and Hillary.
Right. Well, we're not sure they're meeting, but okay. But they may be. I'm
I
in.
think they're great.
Well,
Great.
praise for Bill and Hillary. I'm in. So and then you go up to, you know, to green. You go up to green. Right. I'm in. Right. You go up to green, and you know, kind of love means kind of something else. You know, and it's love means something at every level of consciousness. So when, you know, if you would make a kind of beautiful kind of cartoon, you'd have these two people saying "I love you," right? They're saying "I love you" to each other, but each one is shaded different on the color scheme. And then you have a little bubble saying, what do they mean when they say I love you? And it means something completely different, right? So when I say I love you, right, in other words, what do I mean by love, right? And it's refracted through the prism of my level of consciousness, which is core, right, to an integral journey of love. So what Diane's saying, and we completely agree on it, is that I can always hold my level of consciousness. Meaning, even if the other person shattered the vessel, right, I don't need to have them seduce me into the pre-conventional.
And that's where you get really tested in terms of whether your love is genuinely transpersonal. Because when you get to a cosmic-centric level or a unconditional love level or whatever it is, in a structure stage, not in a state, we can all access it in a state. We can all get it in a state. But when it's stabilized at a structural level, the test is always these: can you love somebody hating you? You know, can you love the fact that your ex-husband can't stand you? Can you love that you've never been able to talk to your mother forever? Can you stand that you live in a community where people don't get you? Can you love them in spite of that? And that's hard. That's hard work, you know, and it's easy to do when we're in meditation together, a little harder to do when they're gossiping about you in the grocery store and you feel it. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that love gets really tested in the face of unlove.
And love gets tested in the face of unlove, and that's where liberation happens. And that doesn't mean to necessarily turn the other cheek. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean not to deploy skillful means. It doesn't mean not to deploy all the levels of protection that you need to deploy. Clearly you do. So love doesn't mean integrally to be naive, right, or stupid, right? You know, there's, as the old rabbis used to say, there's no mitzvah to be stupid. Right? Clearly you need to deploy, right, what you need to deploy. At the same time, what you can be responsible for is your interior state of consciousness.
And in the work that many of you do, I think addicts, one of the great gifts of addicts in the world is that they test us in both ways. They test us in the unconditioned ability to love, and they test us in the practicality. Like, can you actually be skillful in relationship to boundaries and saying no and setting limits, or even saying I'm not going to deal with you anymore, and still love in spite of that? That's the beauty of working with people and loving people who have addictions.
And it was also the masculine compassion we were talking about yesterday,
Precisely.
right, that Dee picked up on.
And this is the practice. This is where we're, you know, in this moment we're bringing just the practice of loving into the conversation, how we practice letting it come through. And it's very hard. It's not easy.
And yet there's something magical that happens when, say, a couple loves the truth together. And that's where you started talking about.
That's exactly right. That's
the development that can happen is very unique and precious.
Beautiful.
But there's something like there's an alchemy that each person
when they're holding that
it.
same level of consciousness and looking at it together. That's so gorgeous.
It infuses something that an individual can't have alone.
Beautiful.
I mean, they can still have a